Out of the mists of time, through a history spanning thousands of years, Japan today is a unique world of its own, entrancing in its beauty, mysterious in its customs, and energized by its people, each soul loved by God. The indigenous religion of Japan is Shintoism, and its influence permeates virtually every aspect of Japanese life. From birth rites to wedding ceremonies to business customs, the Shinto belief system is fully integrated into the national culture. In a parallel coexistence, Buddhism has blossomed throughout Japan ever since it was introduced in the 6th century, and now it also dominates religious life. With the mixing of these two primary religions, the Japanese worship more than 10 million gods. But in contemporary life, a third religion, more secular and Western, takes priority. Materialism in all its variations drives this nation towards its destiny. In this spiritual milieu, where does Christianity stand? Though the Bible is a perennial bestseller and the 1/3 of the Japanese prefer Christianity to other religions, actual Christian believers number less than 1% of the entire population. That means that in all likelihood, of all the people in this bustling intersection, there might be only one believer. Imagine that you are a Japanese Christian, heading home after a stressful day at your school or place of work, where you're probably the only Christian, and now you might be the only believer on this crowded train. It's easy to see that Japanese Christians need as much prayer and spiritual support as possible from their brothers and sisters around the world. God has endowed Japan with an abundant witness of His creative love expressed in the beauty of nature. But sometimes nature will interrupt its constant whisper of God's magnificent power with a malevolent roar that shatters a complacent society to its core. Early in the morning of January 17, 1995, the Great Hanshin earthquake virtually destroyed Kobe, Japan. The aftermath of this destruction left more than 6,000 dead, tens of thousands injured, and massive devastation in the city. On a different, wider level, the entire nation's once vaunted confidence in themselves and their materialism was left in ruins as well. But in the midst of tragedy, Christians took action and offered a ray of hope to their communities with volunteer help, temporary housing, soup kitchens, and other relief efforts. Then, with determination and industriousness, out of the shambles of their lives and neighborhoods, Kobe accepted the challenge to rebuild, and within 2 years has been very successful in nearly returning the city to normal. With the same fortitude and adaptability, the Japanese have faced the challenge of major recession in the 90s, and are renewing their economy to enter a new century of world business partnerships. For just a moment, imagine a similar spiritual renewal under the lordship of Jesus Christ. Think of the impact for the growth of the church in Japan. Think of the spiritual overflow into unreached countries. Imagine the significant impact that Japan could have on the rest of Asia, even the rest of the world, when God's Spirit is her driving force. Life for the typical Japanese person would seem promising and hopeful, yet in spite of a facade of excitement and smiles on faces, hearts are hollow and empty. As day turns to night, tens of thousands of youth flood the cities searching for enjoyment, happiness, romance, anything that will give meaning to their lives. But come morning light, they are left still empty as the echoing streets, still weary, still without hope. Once again, the need for vital prayer and spiritual release is urgently needed. Western influence has brought intriguing changes to Japan. Occasionally, the resulting mix of traditional customs and Western adaptations strikes the outsider as almost comic. For the most part, however, the blend is positive or neutral and eagerly adapted by today's generation of Japanese. But sometimes these outside trends and values that seem so fashionable, so modern, and initially alluring can open doors to influences that can be tragic.
I'm here with the Mormon Church, and our religion is really growing in Japan, and lots of other people from our country are coming over here to help teach about our religion, our beliefs, as well as many other religions such as the Jehovah's Witnesses. They're coming over here also. I'm sure there's all different types of sects of religions that are coming here, but I don't really know about all of them.
Fortunately, the good news is that God is building a strong and vibrant church, witnessing to their own people and to other nations too. In this college Bible study, a recently returned Japanese missionary to Thailand is sharing with students how they too can impact Asia with the gospel. He represents the latest expansion of missions in Japan. Since the late 1800s, thousands of Protestant missionaries have invested their lives into the spiritual awakening of Japan. Southern Baptist missionaries arrived in Japan in 1889 and have served in successful outreach ever since. C.K. Dozier was one of those pioneers who lived and died in Japan for the cause of Christ. This chapel at Seinan Jogakuin Girls' School has been filled with 600 schoolgirls every Tuesday and Thursday since 1922. The main emphasis of the Japan Baptist Mission is evangelism, and this was the reason for starting these Christian schools. And evangelism is the key purpose for which they still exist today. "700 junior high school girls and another 800 senior high school girls, along with college students at 2 universities, are exposed to the gospel through regular chapel times and courses in Christianity at Baptist schools. Many Japanese who make decisions later in life say that attending a Christian school is what planted the seeds for their decision. The missionary endeavor is not limited to the career missionary. Southern Baptists in America have sent many volunteer construction teams to Japan for important practical service. This missionary house is being built by such a team. Less than 2 miles away, on an easy-access street, stands Wajiro Baptist Church. It was recently constructed by Southern Baptist volunteers, and it stands as a door for the gospel and a tribute to the skill and cooperation of the volunteer program. The Kobe Friendship House first opened its doors in the 1970s. Like many Japan Baptist Mission outreach ministries, it emphasizes relationship evangelism. The Friendship House builds relationships in the surrounding area through activities such as traditional brush painting classes, English classes, chapel time for mothers, and an evening chapel time for businessmen. All who participate are involved in Bible studies. Here, missionaries and Japanese volunteers cooperate to bring the children's classes together for a study about the Good Samaritan. Early on an Easter Sunday morning, these Japanese businessmen travel to Tokyo on the bullet train at just over 150 miles per hour. At the same moment, Tokyo Baptist Church is celebrating the risen Lord in a glorious Easter service. English-language churches represent less than 10% of the Baptist mission churches in Japan. Yet over 25% of reported baptisms come from these international ministries. Members at these international churches come from over 35 different nations. Some are in Japan for business, some on diplomatic service. Many return to their own homeland as ambassadors for the gospel. After World War II, when hospital facilities were scarce, Baptists found open doors for evangelism by starting medical ministries. Today, the Japan Baptist Hospital in Kyoto provides expert care, such as this preemie intensive care unit working around the clock to ensure these babies will have long, healthy lives. The doctors and nurses here start their day with chapel time to ensure healthy spiritual growth as well. Baptist missionaries know the value of opening their homes for food, fun, and fellowship. For many Japanese, these times are their only contact with Christians. The primary task of Southern Baptist missionaries in Japan is to be involved in planting and growing churches. The goal for these churches is to call a Japanese pastor and for the missionary to turn over the leadership to that national pastor. Southern Baptists in Japan have started hundreds of these churches, and with God's leading and your prayers, the future looks even brighter. Through the last 100 years of Protestant missionary effort, many different denominations and mission agencies have worked together to nurture the gospel in Japan. In spite of their faithful service, the harvest has been slow in coming. Recently, however, many missionaries and church leaders serving in Japan have sensed God's Spirit moving in a fresh, new way, as Japanese are beginning to see their need and respond to Jesus.
We confess the sins of our nation, and Lord, we are guilty of a prayerless life. We've turned away hearts from your laws, and have taken for granted your unchanging grace. Turn away this curse from our country. We say that we've robbed you, our storehouses are bare. Open wide the floodgates of heaven. Rebuke the devourer, so we may not be destroyed. That if we'd humble ourselves and begin to pray, you would heal our barren land and cleanse us with your rain. Don't pass us by. Let this be the generation, Lord, that lifts up your name to all the world. Save us, oh God. Save a people for yourself, oh Lord. Let the fear of the Lord be their stead.